All right, so we're continuing on looking at C.S. Lewis's The Four Loves, and we're going to be doing this the rest of this week, and I believe next week, and then we're done with the book. But we still have a lot to get through regarding Lewis's analysis of the different kinds of love, how they impact human life, how to properly carry them out, and the kinds of effects that they can have on us if not wielded properly. Today we're going to look at two chapters, chapters 3 and 4. The one looks at a type of love known as affection or storge, and the other looks at friendship, which is a topic that we've already visited, but we're going to look at what Lewis has to say about that. So we'll start with chapter 3. Lewis defines affection as follows. Basically, the love organisms have for each other. He brings up the Greek word storge as being where this kind of love comes from in our Greek roots of Western philosophy. It's the kind of love that parents have for their offspring, that you might have for a person that you're particularly fond of, right? That offspring have for their parents. Lewis calls this affection. It's a kind of warm, fond feeling, right? It might cause you to think well of somebody. It might cause you to miss them. It has to do, I think, with having a favorable view of the person that is an object of your affection in some way. Lewis breaks down his analysis of this kind of love by expressing some of its main characteristics to us. He says that this kind of love is the most indiscriminate. That is, it doesn't care or depend on language, species, intelligence, rights, race. Gender. We feel affection for a wide range of people. They can be dumber than us. They can be smarter than us. They can be a different race than us, or a different sex, or a different gender. They don't even have to speak the same language, right? You can have affection for things that aren't even human, right? Just a general fondness. It's supposed to be some sort of fondness that we experience for another organism. You might say it's associated with some sort of warm, fuzzy feeling that you have inside. Not eros, but again, I think fondness is a good word. So it doesn't depend on the person's language, race, sex, gender, hair color, whatever. We have affection for people of all different kinds, right? He says that this love is humble. It's the broadest form of love that we generally embody and act out. And it's based on what is familiar to us. In order for us to have affection for something, we need to be familiar with it. We can't be affectionate to someone that we don't know or haven't met. The fondness that you have for your friend is in some sense born out of the fact that you know them, you know what they are like, you have had experiences with them. He talks about this on pages 56 and 57 in this chapter. Affection, as I have said, is the humblest love. It gives itself no airs. People can be proud of being in love and of friendship, but affection is modest, even furtive or secretive and shamefaced. Once when I had remarked on the affection quite often found between cat and dog, my friend replied, "Yes, but I bet no dog would ever confess it to the other dogs." That is at least a good caricature of much human affection. Let homely faces stay at home, says Comus. Now affection has a very homely face. So have many of those for whom we feel it. It is no proof of our refinement or perceptiveness that we love them, nor that they love us. What I have called appreciative love is no basic element in affection. It usually needs absence or bereavement to set us praising those to whom only affection binds us. We take them for granted. And this taking for granted, which is an outrage in erotic love, is here right and proper in affection, up to a point. It fits the comfortable, quiet nature of this feeling. Affection would not be affection if it was loudly and frequently expressed. To produce it in public is like getting your household furniture out for a move. It did very well in its place, but it looks shabby or tawdry or grotesque in the sunshine. Affection almost slinks or seeps through our lives. It lives with humble, undressed, private things. Soft slippers, old clothes, old jokes, the thump of a sleepy dog's tail on the kitchen floor, the sound of a sewing machine, a gollywog left on the lawn. So we can have affection for a wide range of things. And different organisms and different species can have affections for us or each other, right? Perhaps you have a dog and a cat at home that are like best buds, right? Lewis is saying that's the kind of love that I'm talking about here. Affection. We can have affection for other organisms, for things. It's this warm, kind of secretive, fuzzy feeling. Modest, humble, and directed toward a wide range of phenomena. But it can also form the basis of other loves. Yeah?
Do you think it has a lot to do with like being a protector?
Being a protector. I don't know, because people, traditionally the protector role is associated with the masculine role, right, in our society. I'm not saying that's good or bad, that's just how it is. But I would say women too have affection for things, right?
Yeah, but I guess like in the way that like a mama bear would protect its cub, you know?
So maybe we could say in general men and women act out affection differently. That could be true. Yeah, makes sense. I'm not sure how much it depends on protection or exactly what the nature of the relationship is between you and the one that you are affectionate towards, because we can, have affection towards things, presumably. But that's an interesting question.
I guess it just kind of comes down to like if I'm affectionate or I love something, like I want to preserve them, you know?
Right. Yeah, if we were going to liken any one of these loves perhaps to that role, maybe it would be affection, or even friendship, which we'll talk about later. There might be friendship can often get twisted in that you want to protect the person for your own sake, right? For yourself, so that you can have them all. But we'll get to that later. In any case, another thing that Lewis wants to say here is that affection can basically be a breeding ground for other kinds of love in our lives. Loves like friendship, erotic love, charity, which we're going to get to at the end of our exploration of Lewis. That is, we can start off being affectionate towards someone, and that can morph into a different kind of love, or grow a different kind of love within us. Oops. Having problems writing today. And it can also form the basis or grow within us a certain appreciation for things. Because we do appreciate the objects of our affection, right? What affection seems to do for us is, in a sense, it frees us from our own idiosyncrasies. When we are reflecting on the object of our affection, or when we are affectionate towards something, we come to appreciate the thing for what it is in and of itself. You know? It's not linked as strongly towards, I don't know, what our personal desires and views of things are. We kind of recognize the value and the beauty of the thing for itself, rather than the way that we might look at something that is just merely useful to us, right? We only value it insofar as it is useful to our personal ends and desires. Is that how you spell that? I don't know.
Yes.
I'm having a weird spelling day. I might be wrong. One of the things that I like in this chapter is Lewis's brief discussion of how we often show affection to things. How do you behave when you pick your cat up in your arms? Or how do you behave maybe when you see your grandmother?
You kind of like treat it like it's like cute in a way.
You treat it like it's cute in a way? What do you do? What do we do to our pets? What do we do on our grandmother's cheeks?
We kiss them.
We kiss them. Yeah. Lewis has this nice bit in this chapter about how these loves are often expressed with a kiss. And he talks about this on page 58 that I think is worthy touching upon. This blending and overlapping of the loves is well kept before us by the fact that at most times and places, all three of them, friendship, affection, and eros, had in common as their expression the kiss. In modern England, friendship no longer uses it, but affection and eros do. It belongs so fully to both that we cannot now tell which borrowed it from the other, or whether there were borrowing at all. To be sure, you may say that the kiss of affection differs from the kiss of eros. Yes, but not all kisses between lovers are lovers' kisses. Again, both these loves tend, and it embarrasses many moderns, to use a little language or baby talk. And this is not peculiar to the human species. Professor Lorenz has told us that when jackdaws are amorous, their calls, quote, consist chiefly of infantile sounds reserved by adult jackdaws for these occasions. We and the birds have the same excuse. Different sorts of tenderness are both tenderness, and the language of the earliest tenderness we have ever known is recalled to do duty for the new sort. So think about that. Think about the things that you have affection towards. Isn't it true that you kiss them? And isn't it true that you engage in baby talk?
Yeah.
How do you talk to your dog or your cat?
I kind of talk to mine like a hillbilly, but it's a little different. Mine's name is Chuck Nasty, so.
Chuck Nasty, that's a great name. Hey, do you ever pick up your pet and you hug him and you kiss him? You're like, oh, you're so cute. Oh, I love you. Right?
Yeah.
That's how we treat things, right? When we're affectionate, right? Especially towards animals, right? You don't pick up a human generally, but
That's interesting.
isn't it? Or when you're in a relationship, don't you sometimes engage in silly talk? Don't you? Y'all have had this experience, right?
I don't know.
When you're particularly comfortable with someone, you say something a little silly.
Maybe a little British accent here and there.
A little British accent.
But
Y'all know exactly what this is, right? Like, or at least you've seen it. In movies, TV shows, perhaps out in public. There's that cringy couple that's like, oh, I love you so much, right? And you're like, oh, don't do that, right, in public.
Dude, that was my roommate all freshman year.
Tell me about it. What was it like?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I had to get extra noise canceling headphones to fucking tolerate that shit. But
It got on your nerves?
well, he was a theater kid too, so it was just even worse because they would like sing to each other too.
They were very affectionate,
That's what I meant.
right? Isn't there something comforting and appropriate about that, though, when you're in that situation? Yes or no?
You can't be-
Come on, haven't you guys been in love
Yeah.
and said dumb, stupid baby talk to somebody?
Yes.
And it felt right in the moment, didn't it? It's embarrassing to talk about it in class, but I think Lewis has a good and interesting point here. And what I think is funny is that this isn't reserved just to the human species, right?
Oh, it's funny you say that because I've been waiting to say something about that.
Okay, well, what was on your mind?
The way we look at dogs, like how they're cute, like specifically puppies, like how they're like cute and adorable and all that. That's supposedly how like elephants look at humans.
Right. Yeah, the same chemicals released in their brain, right? Doesn't it just make you so happy to realize that elephants look at us as like we're little puppies or kittens? Oh, that just tickles me. I love it. It's hilarious.
They're gonna give me an elephant.
After everything that we put them through, they still look at us like we're little puppies and kittens. It's great. So affection can be wonderful, right? We can have affection for a bunch of different things. We can have affection for our pets, for people in our lives. But of course, affection can turn ugly, right? Lewis spends a lot of time in this chapter talking about how affection can get twisted and how it can form an expectation in people that they deserve it, which causes them to act in these kind of toxic ways. Affection does not always come out right, and it does not always produce good consequences. First of all, it can lead people to think that they have a right to affection. It can lead people to think that others have an obligation to be affectionate towards them. When in fact we don't deserve it, right? It can form this fake expectation in us, or false expectation. Affection can get twisted. It can produce spite and pettiness within us and others, especially if we think we have a right to it and we're not getting it, right? It can produce jealousy, and perhaps at its worst, it can suffocate people. You can suffocate people with your affection, right? And maybe you've been on the receiving end of this. Lewis talks about one, I think, very interesting and insightful example on pages 74 and 75 about how affection can become twisted, and it can restrain and constrain, and it can corrode relationships in a way. Here's what he has to say about it. I'm going to read pages 74 and 75 and see if you can, if not empathize, sympathize with what Lewis is saying here. Okay? If I can fit here. Mrs. Fidget very often said that she lived for her family. And it was not untrue. Everyone in the neighborhood knew it. She lives for her family, they said. What a wife and mother. She did all the washing. True, she did it badly, and they could have afforded to send it to a laundry, and they frequently begged her not to do it, but she did. There was always a hot lunch waiting for anyone who was at home, and always a hot meal at night, even in midsummer. They implored her not to provide this. They protested, almost with tears in their eyes, and with truth, that they liked cold meals. It made no difference. She was living for her family. She was always sat up to welcome you home if you were out late at night. 2 or 3 in the morning, it made no odds. You would always find the frail, pale, weary face awaiting you, like a silent accusation. Which meant, of course, that you couldn't with any decency go out very often. She was always making things too, being, in her own estimation, I'm no judge myself, an excellent amateur dressmaker and a great knitter. And of course, unless you were a heartless brute, you had to wear the things. The vicar tells me that since her death, the contributions of the family alone to sales of work outweigh those of all his other parishioners put together. And then her care for their health. She bore the whole burden of that daughter's delicacy alone. The doctor, an old friend, and it was not being done on national health, was never allowed to discuss matters with his patient. After the briefest examination of her, he was taken into another room by the mother. The girl was to have no worries, no responsibility for her own health. Only loving care, caresses, special foods, horrible tonic wines, and breakfast in bed. For Mrs. Fidget, as she so often said, would work her fingers to the bone for her family. They couldn't stop her, nor could they, being decent people, quite sit still and watch her do it. They had to help. Indeed, they were always having to help. That is, they did things for her to help her to do things for them which they didn't want done. Does this sound like anything that you've had experience with?
This is my grandmother, straight through.
Do you know somebody in your life who has such affection for you that they just do these things and you're like, stop fucking doing these things. I don't want you to do them. They make me feel bad. They make me feel guilty. Our relationship is not as good as it could be because you feel the need to do all this stuff that you don't got to do. Yeah? Tell me about it. Can you see here how affection is like being twisted into corroding relationships? Tell me about your experiences with this. You're anonymous, I swear. Nobody's going to know who you are.
Like I said, my grandmother. She lives across the street from my mom's house. And it's like one of those things where like I'll go in public and people will know her because everyone knows her. she drives around with a car that has her name on the license plate.
Awesome.
And they're like, oh, you're the best grandma in the world. She does so much for you guys. We hear all about it. Like, all that she does for us. But at no point did we ever ask her to do any of the things.
Right, and how
So
does
we
that
have
make
to
you
be
feel?
Well, it's the suffocating thing, like you said, and like that she doesn't want us to have independence, but also she doesn't want to be doing the things, and she complains about doing them the entire time.
Right, right, and it puts you in a weird paradoxical situation, right, where you feel obligated to thank her for what she's done, despite the fact you didn't ask for it, despite the fact that she's probably making your life worse in these areas, right? Yet you'd be a monster not to thank her and be grateful, right?
And to not praise her to those people that are like, oh, your grandmother's the best. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, you couldn't reveal the truth, right? That would make you a heartless monster. And you can't say anything to Grandma, because she's not going to listen, right? She's not going to hear it. So, affection can take an ugly turn, right? Who else has had experience with this? Yeah?
Not as bad, but like my grandparents are always just want me to just stuff my face whenever they make food.
And you're just like sitting there in pain. You're like, God, Grandma, no, please. Eat the pea mash, like whatever it is, yeah? Which, pea and mashed potatoes sounds great. Very English thing. Lewis would approve of it, but yeah, say more.
That's kind of like the extent of it, but it's just like, I don't know. I used to eat a lot because I used to play football, and like I could eat so much that like they expect me to eat a lot.
Yeah, they still expect you to be on the same diet.
Yeah, and then it's like, well, my stomach shrunk a bunch, and then they're just like, keep eating, come on.
Yeah.
Or it's just like my dad's side of the family, they're just so disorganized, and like you always expect when you go on vacation to like have to wait like 2 hours to even like get a ride from the airport, and it's just crazy shit. But
yeah.
Not like in the summer.
Maybe there's a lack of affection there, and there's too much affection in the other relationship.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe. So yeah, affection can be great. It can make us feel good. We like doting, on our significant other and on our cats. Oh, I would like nothing more than to just pick my cat up and whirl her around and talk baby talk to her, but she doesn't like it. And she scratches me. So I don't do it for her sake, but God, do I want to, right? But even you can see, like, especially in relationships with pets, how it can be suffocating, right? My poor Biddy, her name is Bit, I call her Biddy, itty bitty kitty. By picking her up and trying to show her affection, I constrain her. I suffocate her, right? I impress my own will upon hers. And in that sense, affection can be bad. It can produce these bad expectations. It can produce jealousy, pettiness, resentment. Thus, I think what Lewis is trying to get us to see is affection, like the other loves, is an art. And by art, I mean techne. This is the Greek word that we get technique from. It's doing something according to a certain methodology or set of rules in an ordered, proper way. And this is something that we'll see Erich Fromm touching upon too in his book, The Art of Loving. Lewis here is also arguing that these different kinds of loves are skills or arts that we need to practice, that we need to work on. And if we don't engage in them properly, they're going to have bad effects. Okay? What do you think about that idea? That love, these different kinds of loves, are skills or arts, like martial arts that we need to practice, that we need to work on getting good at. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Would you say more?
I'm not sure. I feel like if it's something that you're going to do, you kind of have to practice pretty much everything if you think about it.
Why?
repetition makes you better at it.
So when you start off, you're not good at it.
Yeah.
Like, you got to learn how to be good at it, right? Like chess. You got to play chess to get good at chess, right? Or watch a lot of Gotham chess. I don't know.
I mean, it's like,
Right?
you've never seen,
Or Magnus.
like a sales guy, like, you know those guys practice how they talk and how to close a deal all the time.
For sure, right? Yeah.
And so, like, it's the same thing with love. It's, I think it's a lot about emotional understanding and putting yourself in other people's shoes. And then it's also trying to take into account their needs as well.
Okay, so if we're going to get good at love, it's something that we need to practice doing, and part of that involves being willing to entertain different perspectives, right? See things from different angles, perhaps consider how the object of our love is thinking about and doing things. Yeah? Yeah, this is what Erich Fromm is going to say too. So I think when we get to his book, you'll really like what he has to say about this. But to get on with what Lewis has to say at the end of this chapter, he tells us that this love can be awesome. This love can feel great. It can produce wonderful things. But it alone cannot ultimately sustain or fulfill us. That is, we're not going to be able to live a full, happy, healthy, fulfilled life if we just have affection and if we just lean on affection. If we do try to ultimately lean on affection as the best kind of love, as the only thing that we need in our lives, we may become like Mrs. Fidget, right? We may suffocate the people around us. We may damage our relationships.
It seems like a very self-centered love and doesn't really take account into anyone else.
It can become self-centered, right? And you can start to get into a mode of unnecessary toxic self-sacrifice, right? Isn't that what Mrs. Fidget is doing? She is sacrificing her time, her poor fingers. She's working them to the bone for her family, doing things that she doesn't need to do, that are actually, things that they don't want. Like she's making stew, and it's 100 degrees outside. It's like we don't want stew during the midsummer,
I always want stew. That's just me.
I love stew too, but you can see how you might want cold food, right, on a hot summer day, like watermelon and a nice chicken salad or something. I don't know.
Chicken salad with like the mayonnaise?
No, like chicken with greens
Lettuce?
and
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. Cool. I had to make sure.
So this kind of love, like the feelings, the love that we have for animals and things and ideas and places, it's not ultimately going to sustain or fulfill us or our relationships. Or human life in general. You may have perhaps noticed a pattern here. Until we get to the end of the book, Lewis is going to say all of the loves that we are talking about. Affection, eros, friendship. As you'll see, he's going to say these loves alone are not going to sustain us and fulfill us. And perhaps we shouldn't prioritize them as the best kind of love. Why? Because they can turn into what he calls demons. He talks about this on pages 81 and 82. At the end of this chapter, near the end of the chapter. Second paragraph of 81. Affection produces happiness if, and only if, there is common sense and give and take in decency. In other words, only if something more and other than affection is added. The mere feeling is not enough. You need common sense, that is reason. You need give and take, that is, you need justice. Continually stimulating mere affection when it fades and restraining it when it forgets or would defy the art of love. You need decency. There is no disguising the fact that this means goodness, patience, self-denial, humility, and the continual intervention of a far higher sort of love than affection in itself can ever be. That is the whole point. If we try to live by affection alone, affection will go bad on us. How bad, I believe, we seldom recognize. Can Mrs. Fidget really have been quite unaware of the countless frustrations and miseries she inflicted on her family? It passes belief. She knew, of course she knew, that it spoiled your whole evening to know that when you came home, you would find her uselessly, accusingly sitting up for you. She continued all these practices because if she had dropped them, she would have been faced with the fact that she was determined not to see, would have known that she was not necessary. That is the first motive. Then, too, the very laboriousness of her life silenced her secret doubts as to the quality of her love. The more her feet burned and her back ached, the better. For this pain whispered in her ear, "How much I must love them all if I do all this." That is the second motive. But I think there is a lower depth. The unappreciativeness of the others, those terrible wounding words, anything will wound Mrs. Fidget, in which they begged her to send the washing out, enabled her to feel ill-used, therefore to have a continual grievance, to enjoy the pleasures of resentment. If anyone says he does not know those pleasures, he is a liar or a saint. It is true that they are pleasures only to those who hate. But then a love like Mrs. Fidget's contains a good deal of hatred. It was of erotic love that the Roman poet said, "I love and hate." But other kinds of love admit the same mixture. They carry in them the seeds of hatred. If affection is made the absolute sovereign of a human life, those seeds will germinate. Love, having become a god to us, becomes a demon. Thus, we need to submit affection to other values and to other forms of love if we're going to act it out properly, and if we're going to make sure that it doesn't harm our relationships and us. Make sense? Cool. Any final comments, questions on affection? You feel like you kind of get what Lewis is saying here? Do you agree? You think you need to add other stuff to affection to keep it healthy and in line? Like decency, justice, reason?
I think he has a really good point about like the give and take aspect of it.
Okay, say something about that, yeah.
Like when love is not reciprocated, it's usually not going to end well, and it's honestly destined to fail in my opinion. And I think without like kind of the equal give and take, it's always gonna kind of end up in that like demonic relationship that grandma has with like her family, just wanting to only doing it because you think it's like your only purpose, and it's a very selfish and pretty destructive path to go down.
Right, yeah. It can produce resentment, right? It reminds me of that Offspring song. The more I suffer, the more it shows I really care, right? Yeah. Talking about this girl that he wants to be with, right? But she doesn't want to be with him. And so he picks her up when she falls down. He looks out for her. He comforts her when other guys are treating her badly. And he thinks that it's his suffering, right? He's like, the more that she can see that I'm suffering, the more it shows that I care, right? But in a weird, twisted way, that's not good, right? It's building some sort of resentment and hatred towards the person that he ultimately wants to love.
It's just wasting his time too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Should we move on to friendship? See what Lewis has to say about friendship? Okay. I'm going to take a drink of water, and then we'll start. I feel like I've been talking a lot. Lewis begins his analysis of friendship by talking about how the ancients feel about it and how we think and feel about it today. Recall what Aristotle had to say about friendship. He said that friendship is the most important external good, right? Friendship is key to living a happy, moral, fulfilled life. Because we have various psychological and social needs, right, as humans. Not to be isolated. We need to interact with people. And he said that good friends push us higher. He valued friendship very highly. And this is generally something in the ancient world that was shared between important thinkers. The ancient world, Lewis argues, regarded friendship much higher than we do today. Nowadays, it doesn't seem like we care as much about friendship or put it on the same pedestal as the ancient Greeks, for example, did. Think about who have you been friends with in your life. How strong those bonds have been. How quickly and easily some friendships were formed and then broken. How often you talk about friendship. How often it's a subject of conversation among the people you know. Lewis begins this chapter by comparing how we view friendship nowadays and treat it with how it was many, many years ago. He says that nowadays, and I believe he was writing this in the 50s, but I could be wrong. He says few people experience true friendship. It's rare. Think about how many true friends you have in your life. How many? I think I have maybe 4. What about y'all? Do you have a lot of true friends that would stick with you through thick and thin? That would look out for you, that wants your best, that would sacrifice for you? If you do, I bet you don't have too many, right? You probably have a lot more acquaintances, right? Or people that you party with, right? Or whatever it is. But they're not your true friends, right? He thinks it's sad that friendship has kind of become less highly regarded nowadays. Maybe it has something to do with how we've organized society or our economy, how we were conditioned. In any case, friendship is not discussed as much as it used to be. And it doesn't seem like people care about it as much as they used to. Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with like breaking the strong foundations of family. And
Okay.
Kind of like back in like ancient society or earlier times, people would live in more like family clans where there was like large communities and like it wasn't just like your immediate family living together, it was like multiple families, and so that created a strong bond of community and like fostered like a great environment for friendship. And now like today, everybody's just told like, you know, you gotta be independent, you should be individualized, and like
Right.
it's embarrassing to live with your parents or all that kind of stuff. And it's really, I think, in a lot of ways, a way to strip wealth away from people, and not just monetarily, but in relationships too.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, think about the way that we've constructed society now compared to how it was centuries ago. We don't live in the same kind of tight-knit communities that we used to, right? We don't all live in a village together in the same clan, right? Growing up together, sharing in all these experiences together. Now we live in apartment buildings or houses separate from others, surrounded by a lot of people that we don't know, right? I don't know many of my neighbors at all. But back in the day, it would have been the case that you were surrounded by people that you were related to, right? Or people who were in your clan or your tribe. Not so much anymore, in the U.S. at least. We could say that contemporary society has increased atomization in society. Now we live kind of in our own concrete boxes. We drive our own metal boxes to our own jobs with people that we're not related to, that we don't know. We major in different things, right? There has been an individualization, I think, that makes true friendship more difficult in our day and age. And I think Lewis would agree. Yeah.
I think also too, it's just like one of the bigger problems is the media just manufactures hate amongst people, whether like it's left and right or just like racial stuff. I mean,
Sure.
It's all just so futile and stupid, and like we need to stop falling for all that bullshit and just realize that we all kind of live on this earth together, and like we should be a community and stuff.
Technological advancement has come with its own dangers,
No.
right? Now you have people being surrounded by all these images all the time that tell you how they're supposed to think and feel and who they're supposed to hate, right? Whereas back in the day, you know, you wouldn't have known what was going on the other side of the world. And it wouldn't have mattered to you, right? It wouldn't have been a significant part of your life. Whereas now, your beliefs on what is happening in Gaza will destroy your relationships, right? If you're on the wrong side of it. So yeah, there's definitely a media impact there, I think. Lewis says that friendship, unlike affection, perhaps unlike eroticism, it is the least natural, instinctive, biological form of love. Compared to affection and eros, which we'll get to next time, there isn't really the same kind of biological mechanism that propels people into friendships, right? There is a biological mechanism for the love, the affection that parents feel for their offspring, and vice versa, right? There's also a biological mechanism for the sexual feelings that we get, which is the basis of a lot of erotic love, right? But is there a biological drive for friendship? Lewis is a little questioning on that, right? It doesn't seem like it is instinctive or biological to the same degree as affection or eros is. What's interesting about it, and this often causes people to look down upon friendship, is that unlike affection, it is discriminate. It's discriminate, it's individualistic, and it's undemocratic. Because we're not friends with everyone, right? We pick and choose our friends. We decide who we're going to be friends with. We decide who we're going to spend time with. And that ends up rubbing a lot of people the wrong way, right? We are friends with particular people, right? We're not friends with humanity. We're not friends with socialists. We're friends with Jim, who happens to be a socialist, right? We're not friends with anarcho-capitalists. We're friends with Sally, who happens to be an anarcho-capitalist, right? Friendship is discriminate. We pick and choose our friends. It's not something that we have for all people, right? Maybe we have some sort of small love for everybody insofar as they're a human. That's not what friendship is about, right? Friendship is a bond forged between individuals. And as we'll see, it comes from sharing a vision, having a goal, having experiences with a particular person. In principle, this isn't something we can engage in with everybody that exists. We can't be friends with everybody, because friendship is a particular kind of love that occurs between individuals and can be bolstered by group activity, but we'll get to there later. He also notes in this chapter that it has been linked throughout history to homosexuality. And he thinks that it's kind of unfortunate that that's the case, because friendship isn't that. Friendship isn't about sexual attraction. Friendship isn't about eroticism. It's a different kind of love entirely. And so it needs to be analyzed on its own merits. He makes an important distinction later in the chapter as well, one that it would be wise for us to meditate on. In our day and age, we are all too quick to equate companionship with friendship. But Lewis says that these are two different things. Okay? There is a difference between being somebody's mere companion or somebody's mere acquaintance and actually being their friend. Friendship, he says, arises from being together with someone, sharing their vision, and experiencing commonality. Allow me to read for you what he says. This is on pages 96 and 97. On the left side of the page, first full paragraph. Companionship is, however, only the matrix of friendship. It is often called friendship, and many people, when they speak of their friends, mean only their companions. But it is not friendship in the sense I give to the word. By saying this, I do not at all intend to disparage the merely clubbable relation. We do not disparage silver by distinguishing it from gold. But friendship arises out of mere companionship when two or more of the companions discover that they have in common some insight or interest, or even taste, which the others do not share, and which will, till that moment, each believe to be his own unique treasure or burden. The typical expression of opening friendship would be something like, "What? You too? I thought I was the only one." We can imagine that among those early hunters and warriors, single individuals, one in a century, one in 1,000 years, saw what others did not. Saw that the deer was beautiful as well as edible, that hunting was fun as well as necessary. Dreamed that his gods might be not only powerful but holy. But as long as each of these persons dies without finding a kindred soul, nothing, I suspect, will come of it. Art or sport or spiritual religion will not be born. It is when two such persons discover one another, when, whether with immense difficulties and semi-articulate fumblings, or with what would seem to us amazing and elliptical speed, they share their vision. It is then that friendship is born. And instantly they stand together in an immense solitude. Lovers seek for privacy. Friends find this solitude about them, this barrier between them and the herd, whether they want it or not. So, friendship arises when individuals realize that they share some sort of vision or interest or taste. It's not the same as just hanging out with someone. Mere companionship is just spending time together, right? Maybe you're a part of the swimming club. But that doesn't mean that you're friends, right, with everybody in swimming club. You become friends with someone normally when you both realize you share an idea or a belief or a vision or a taste. And that thing links you. This is in one way that it differs from some of the other kinds of love, right? There is a difference between lovers who are lovers and lovers who are also friends, right? Lewis would say, you are friends with your lover if you have a commonality or share a vision like this, and you both see that, you recognize that. But we can have affection for people, we can be in love with people without being their friends, right? These things are distinct. Your parents can have affection for you without being your friend, right? And likewise for you, probably the other way, right? So friendship is something unique. It's a unique form of love. Lewis also notes that the interesting thing about friendship is that it is always about something. This is another important point in this chapter. Friendship may be about sharing a vision of the world, about having the same goal, about walking the same path, about literal travel. It is always about something. That's what distinguishes it in part from the other loves. But as for all the goods that friendship brings, it can motivate us to be better people. It can maybe make us wiser, maybe make us nicer and more just. Is friendship all good at the end of the day?
No.
Maybe I should ask this. Does friendship always result in making the world a better place? No. Can you give me an example? What kinds of things can friendship result in?
Stalin and Lenin.
Death, right? Chaos, insecurity. Yeah, sure. You got two buddies who are like, psycho killers. They'll kill people together and they'll be happy about it, right?
That was perfect pitch.
Thank you. Friendship does not necessarily make civilization better. It depends on the nature of the friendship and who the friends are, what their goals and dreams and values are, right? Friendships do not always produce good things for society. And I think this is obvious if we just think about it a little bit, right? We can talk about war. We can talk about people who are religious being friends, right? And perhaps oppressing others. We can talk about friendship being the justification for engaging in bad actions, right? Maybe you've been pulled into drinking or using drugs because that's what your friends started doing. Is that good for you? Many people would say no, right? Especially if you get addicted, bad stuff starts happening, lose your job, whatever, develop a coke habit, whatever it is. So friendship does not necessarily always result in good things. Although it can be a good to us if we are a proper friend and if we prioritize it and enact it in the proper way. Friendship is also interesting, and that Lewis says it does not include the need to be needed. Some people have this need to be needed. That's not what friendship is about. That's not what friendship includes. In this way, we might say it differs from affection or maybe erotic love, right? If you are a mother or a father, part of what it means for you to be healthy and fulfilled is that you feel like you're needed, right? Maybe by your offspring or something. And you get pleasure from being needed and relied upon, right? Maybe if you're a lover too. Think about the relationships that you've had with people, maybe especially the early ones. You wanted to be needed, right? By the person that you were in love with. If they felt like they didn't need you, that kind of hurt you a little bit, right? Or maybe you wanted to be the source of their happiness, like we talked about in the De Sousa book, right? But friendship is not like that. Lewis characterizes it as uninquisitive, unnecessary for our lives, free from most jealousy, and it's not an obligation that we place on people. And I'll break down what he means by each of these here in a second. I might be spelling things wrong. Just hang with me. It's a Monday. I've already talked about this one, right? Your friendship with people does not include the need to be needed if it's proper, right? You don't feel this inherent desire to be needed by your friends, true friends, right? Think about the friends that you've made in high school that you see, right, like once a year. You're not calling them and saying, do you still need me? Do you still miss me? No, you know that relationship is solid, right? And you'll pick it up where you left it off, right? He says friendship is uninquisitive. I think the archetypal representation of this is guys' relationships with each other. You'll hang out with your guy friends. Guys will know this. And then your girlfriend will say, so how's Jack doing? Like, how's his mother? We didn't talk about that shit. We didn't even talk at all, really. We just kind of hung out, played games, whatever. I didn't ask Jack about how his life is. I didn't ask him about his sister. Right? Friendship seems to be more about doing something together than it seems to be about discovering all the facts. Although maybe that differs between men's and women's relationships. I don't know. My partner tells me she and her girlfriends talk about everything. I can't empathize with that. I don't work like that. I don't know.
Like, genuinely,
that's crazy? Yeah.
What do you tell
Guys,
me?
back me up. You know what I'm saying?
There is nothing better than sitting down at a Mexican restaurant and just unloading everything that has happened for 3 months.
Everything.
That's the best experience in the world.
Yeah.
Last night. It was great.
It's so good.
It's so good. I told my friend every single thing that has happened in my life for the past 3 weeks, and we just sat there and I just told him everything.
I couldn't think of a more boring night with my friend.
Right, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Isn't that funny? Yeah. I think this often comes up too in discussions surrounding sex. I have never once told my guy friends what it was like hooking up with somebody and all the things that we did. I know for sure women do that. Like, I've heard it from my girlfriend. She's like, yeah, I give my girlfriends all the details. They know everything about you. And I'm like, what the fuck?
I live with, there's 6 girls in my apartment.
So you know
everything.
Right? So maybe it is a gendered or a sex thing. I don't know. But it's interesting, right? At least between guys, friendship is uninquisitive, Lewis says. Which is a funny thing. It's unnecessary, okay? We don't need friends like we need a parent. Or perhaps like we need to feel loved. Right? Maybe, we need relationships in general. But friendship seems to be a different kind of love than the others, insofar as that goes. Friendship is interesting because it also occurs between individuals, but he says proper friendships are not jealous. You're not jealous if your bro Mac invites his buddies to hang out with you. If you both find out that you and Mac's buddies also share a vision, right? And you become friends. When it comes to friendship, the more the merrier at the pub, right? It's not about just hanging out with Jim, right? It's like, hey, yeah, bring your bros, like it'll be great, right? And I think this is true for women too. Like, I'm not just trying to talk about guys here. Generally, he says, in proper friendships and friend groups, the more the merrier. Right? The more people that you can connect with and share a vision adds to the experience. And it adds to the activity. Finally, he says it's not an obligation. We don't tell people, you need to be friends with me. And we don't punish people for not being friends with us. Or hopefully you don't. I don't know. This isn't so much of a societal expectation, is it? Right? That other people have to be your friend. You recognize that, no, some people are my friends and some people are not. There's some people I want to be friends with, some people I don't want to be friends with. And most people are like cool with that. Right? They're not going to hold a gun to your head and say, you got to be friends with me. Whereas you aren't necessarily tied to people biologically and to your parents, for example. That is a relationship born out of necessity because you wouldn't be able to survive without them. Right? Especially when you were a child. You need somebody to change your diapers and feed you, or else you died. But friendship is not like that, right? You don't depend on your friends for your survival generally. He talks about this stuff on pages 102 and 103. So let's look at what he has to say. Friendship, this is kind of near 2/3 of the way up the page. Friendship is utterly free from affection's need to be needed. We are sorry that any gift or loan or night watching should have been necessary. And now, for heaven's sake, let us forget all about it and go back to the things we really want to do or talk of together. Even gratitude is no enrichment to this love. The stereotyped "don't mention it" here expresses what we really feel. The mark of perfect friendship is not that help will be given when the pinch comes, but that having been given, it makes no difference at all. It was a distraction, an anomaly. It was a horrible waste of time, always too short that we had together. Perhaps we had only a couple hours in which to talk, and God bless, 20 minutes of it has had to be devoted to affairs. For of course we do not want to know our friends' affairs at all. Friendship, unlike Eros, is uninquisitive. You become a man's friend without knowing or caring whether he is married or single, or how he earns his living. What have all these unconcerning things, or matters of fact, have to do with the real question? Do you see the same truth that I do? In a circle of true friends, each man is simply what he is. He stands for nothing but himself. No one cares twopence about anyone else's family, profession, class, income, race, or previous history. Of course, you will get to know most of these in the end, but casually. They will come out bit by bit to furnish an illustration or an analogy, to serve as pegs for an anecdote, never for their own sake. That is the kingliness of friendship. We meet like sovereign princes of independent states, abroad, on neutral ground, freed from our contexts. This love essentially ignores not only our physical bodies, but that whole embodiment which consists of our family, job, past, and connections. At home, besides being Peter or Jane, we also bear a general character, husband or wife, brother or sister, chief, colleague or subordinate. Not among our friends. It is an affair of disentangled or stripped minds. Eros will have naked bodies. Friendship, naked personalities. Hence, if you will not misunderstand me, the exquisite arbitrariness and irresponsibility of this love. I have no duty to be anyone's friend, and no man in the world has a duty to be mine. No claims, no shadow of necessity here. Friendship is unnecessary. Like philosophy, like art, like the universe itself, for God did not need to create. It has no survival value. Rather, it is one of those things which give value to survival. So these are the ways that Lewis describes friendship. It's a very unique form of love. Now, of course, we should also talk about the shadow side of friendship, right? Friendships can turn sour. Friendships can result in bad things. Friendship may also be a negative thing, right? How can friendship be a negative thing? Shout it out. If you have any ideas.
It can inspire hatred.
Okay, how or why might that happen?
If there's like a feud between the two, or however many friends there are.
Oops, shouldn't erase that. Oh well. Yeah, okay. Anything else?
It can enable addictions.
It can enable addictions and vices, yes.
It
What-
can make you weak to your own personality in a way. And that kind of goes with what that's saying, like with like addiction and stuff like that.
Weak to your own personality, like,
More so like a follower.
okay,
A leader.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's like taking the easy route instead of like actually working on yourself. You're like settling for shitty friends who you know aren't good for you.
Okay, so your friendships can sometimes get you into a rut. They can sometimes be used to justify bad things that you're doing. Maybe not working on yourself, maybe, going off the deep end with drugs and alcohol, getting into vice. Yeah, sure. friendship, well, in strange, extreme circumstances, it can lead to death, war, chaos. He discusses this on pages 114 and 115.
I think it can just also just create general strife between you and your family if you like value what your friends think.
It can. Yeah, it can produce conflict in your other relationships, right? You probably have experienced this with if you had a friend and a lover who were jealous of each other, right? Here's what he says, bottom of the page. It is therefore easy to see why authority frowns on friendship. Every real friendship is a sort of secession, even a rebellion. It may be a rebellion of serious thinkers against accepted claptrap, or of faddists against accepted good sense, of real artists against popular ugliness, or of charlatans against civilized taste, of good men against the badness of society, or of bad men against society's goodness. Whichever it is, it will be unwelcome to the top people. In each knot of friends, there is a sectional public opinion, which fortifies its members against the public opinion of the community in general. Each, therefore, is a pocket of potential resistance. Men who have real friends are less easy to manage or get at, harder for good authorities to correct, or for bad authorities to corrupt. Hence, if our masters, by force or by propaganda about togetherness, or the unobtrusively making privacy and unplanned leisure impossible, ever succeed in producing a world where all are companions and none are friends, they will have removed certain dangers, and will also have taken from us what is almost our strongest safeguard against complete servitude. But the dangers are perfectly real. Friendship, as the ancients saw, can be a school of virtue, but also, as they did not see, a school of vice. It is ambivalent. It makes good men better and bad men worse. It would be a waste of time to elaborate the point. What concerns us is not to expatiate on the badness of bad friendships, but to become aware of the possible danger in good ones. This love, like the other natural loves, has its congenital liability to a particular dis-ease. So one of the dangers of friendship is that friendship is constitutive of certain bonds between people. These bonds represent inherently some sort of rebellion to what is outside the bond. So this can be dangerous for political regimes, it can be dangerous for the betterment of society, so on and so forth. Friendship may make us deaf to anybody who's not our friends, right? Because as long as you're accepted by a group of people, why should you give a shit what anybody else has to say about you? Or how you should live your life? But sometimes we should listen to what other people have to say, right? Sometimes our friends aren't leading us down the right road. So friendship can make us deaf or apathetic to society. As he said, and as we've said, friendship may lead one into vice and the perpetuation of vice, right? Why do alcoholics have such a hard time quitting? All of their friends are alcoholics. And so they hang out with people who do this, and it's a constant temptation, right? friendship may lead to these unjustified feelings of superiority over others, or pride, snobbiness, and mean acts of exclusion, trying to keep people out of your group. Right? The basic conclusion here is that friendship, like the other loves so far, is not alone going to be enough to fulfill us, make us good people. Friendship can also turn into a demon. If you consider vices and temptations demons, it can produce further demons. And friendship requires other rules, values, behaviors to keep it in line, to keep it proper. So Lewis says it cannot save itself. Ultimately, what he tries to get at near the end of the chapter is friendship based on God, unsurprisingly, the teachings of Christianity, can be maintained and strengthened and be a good thing in human life. This is how he closes the chapter. Page 126. The friendship is not a reward for our discrimination and good taste in finding one another out. Friendship is the instrument by which God reveals to each of us the beauties of all the others. There are no greater than the beauties of 1,000 other men. By friendship, God opens our eyes to them. They are, like all beauties, derived from Him, and then, in a good friendship, increased by Him through the friendship itself, so that it is His instrument for creating as well as for revealing. At this feast, it is He who has spread the board, and it is He who has chosen the guests. Speaking of God. It is He we may dare to hope, who sometimes does and always should preside. Let us not reckon without our host. Not that we must always partake of it solemnly. God, who made good laughter, forbid. It is one of the difficult and delightful subtleties of life that we must deeply acknowledge certain things to be serious, and yet retain the power and will to treat them often as lightly as a game. But there will be a time for saying more about this in the next chapter. For the moment, I will only quote Dunbar's beautifully balanced advice. Man, please thy Maker and be merry, and give not for this world a cherry. So he implies at the end that friendship is an instrument that God may use to make the world a better place and reveal to us the beauty of the cosmos. Questions, comments, concerns? You think Lewis is right? In some things? Not other things? How are y'all feeling about what he's saying about friendship in this chapter?
I think what he says about how it reveals the beauty of others is definitely true. And
Okay.
yeah, I think it's just a great opportunity to see who other people are, and then also kind of see those good qualities within yourself as well.
Sure. Yeah. What do the rest of y'all think?
I think it's good to talk about how friendship can lead to bad things, and it's not just that friendship is like this ideal thing that is all good.
Yeah.
Because rather than just like saying, oh, friendship is all good, but sometimes people can be evil, where just pinning all of that bad on evil as a concept, rather than just saying, yeah, you can be a bad friend.
Yeah.
Not necessarily doesn't make you evil, but you can be a bad friend, and it can lead to all this.
Right, yeah. Just because you're friends with someone doesn't mean that you're leading them down the right path, right? Maybe you've been led down a bad path by your friends, or maybe you've been the one leading. I mean, I think we all kind of take turns doing that in our lives, right? Whether we realize it or not. I've been a bad influence on some of the people in my life sometimes. I'm sure we all have. Any questions? Okay, cool.
Are you gonna say that like all the four forms of love is ultimately what causes fulfillment, or does he think it's one specific one?
We'll have to wait and see when we get there. I don't want to spoil anything. All right, well, thank you for coming. Read the entirety of chapter 5, Eros, for Wednesday.